the house. That's right, we're picking up where we left off last week. And this time we're shifting gears and we're moving into the 5-part closing sequence. It's going to be a great conversation, as it always is with Doug. We know that you enjoyed last week's episode. We've heard from many of you, and we are sure that you are going to pass that one around. But this one's going to be equally good. We're excited to bring him back. Welcome here, Doug.
Thank you guys so much for having me today. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. You guys are absolutely amazing what you're doing for the trade, so I really mean that. I'm excited.
Don't call it a comeback. 2 weeks back to back, just like his first episode.
I've been here for years. There's a little,
Great to have you back.
it's a little LL Cool J, am I right, Brian?
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, I'm not sure Nate goes back that far.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't live in the same decade as you two, so appreciate that.
Hey now.
Doug, it's good to have you back, man, and we're so excited after last week's episode. You brought such great content with really content about content and about the consumption of that, as well as the creation of it, and how we can really institute better habits, better listening, better application into our lives. And then you even started touching into the points about how there can be levels of disdain or disgust or even just burnout, if you will, might be another name for it, of being in the home services industry, regardless of whether you're a plumber, electrician, roofer. If you're dealing with clients day in and day out, eventually there comes a point where you kind of get a little tired of it. Even if you're on the phone, if you're listening to this as a CSR or as a manager who has to call people back or whatever, you kind of get tired of it because you end up dealing with some really tough situations. And Doug brought out some great points last week about how listening to understand and placing yourself in the perspective of what they could be going through or have gone through and could be still dealing with right now can make all the difference. And he gave a great story about Christian, comfort advisor in Texas, and how that changed his perspective. So we're excited to get more into a little bit different version of the conversation. This week, Doug, we're going to be talking more about a 5-part closing sequence that you have really mastered and developed, and then how that kind of ties back into what we talked about last week, not only in creating better habits, which of course any type of 5-part system is going to do for us, but also in how it can reinstitute some life back into us who may have gotten a little bit of disdain infection, right, for the client. Yeah. And maybe we can overcome some of those hurdles that we have perhaps personally constructed in our own lives. Before we do that, though, Doug, we already did a little bit of an intro for you last week, so we got some of that story, and you can find more about Doug, I'm sure, on his website as well. Just kind of breaking it into a new section here as you think about the Doug in the future. So we've talked about the Doug in the past, all the accolades and all the bona fides that you have on your resume. Where's Doug Wyatt going, man?
Well, I appreciate that question, Nate. I mean, I guess we never really know, but boy, do I have a vision. And that vision is to help people all over the world become more effective communicators. One of the ways that we can become a more effective communicator, especially for those of us that are in sales, is not to be a high-pressure, pushy, sleazy type of salesperson. Nobody wants a hardcore closer, right? It's one of the telltale signs that it's actually not a true professional. And so at Synergy, we've talked about a lot of things like the grandmother rule. If you wouldn't recommend it to your very own grandmother, you sure as heck better not recommend it to your homeowner. I'm talking about running a process with honor, character, integrity. We're not going to lie, cheat, or steal. We don't have to. What we've got to do is get really, really good and very passionate about describing our value. What is it that differentiates us? And all along the way, it can't just be about us. We do have to seek first to understand, as Dr. Covey would say in Habit 5 and the 7 Habits. We have to work on our empathy so that when somebody does tell us, I can't make a decision, I got to talk to my spouse. When they say, you're the first one in, I've never done this before, I didn't know it was going to cost this much, your price is way too high. Somebody else will do the exact same thing, model number, serial number, size, and they'll do it for half your cost. If we're not mentally prepared for that, as well as verbally prepared for that, it's going to be a tough career, right? And of course, the frustration, maybe even the depression, the burnout is going to set in. So if you go back and listen to the part 1, we've got to find a way to ramp up our intensity with our content consumption, but then we've got to start saying it out loud in role plays, whether that be with our team, with our shower head, with our steering wheel, our windshield. Maybe we sit at the dinner table and we role play it with our spouse, significant other, our kids. everybody should be so sick of hearing us because we're working on mastery. And then once we've got it, we just have to knock the rust off a little bit. So as we go through today, we're going to do some role play. We're going to talk about how we ask for the order. It's one of the number one things when I do role play, or when I've done thousands of ride-alongs in my career in the trades over the last 20 years. It is amazing to me that we sometimes don't even know how to ask for the customer's business. And if we do, it's so awkward, it's so strange, it's like a shark smells blood in the water, right? And so all of a sudden, it's a little awkward, the customer's apprehensive, and there's this little lull, this little silence, and the homeowner just ends up saying something like, okay, well, let me think about it, or okay, I wasn't ready to make a decision, and it's this awkwardness. So what I want to do today is say, I'm going to give a couple of analogies that I think we'll all be able to relate to, whether it's happened to us in our life or somebody else. And then maybe what I say today, I don't mean it to be this way, but it might be a little bit controversial, because I believe in operating like the ultimate professional in the home, and then making a recommendation because that's the reason I believe we were called there. Not to just ask them what they think. All right, and I'll clean that up a little bit because, there's somebody, that you've had on your podcast and that has a book out there, and the words are going to slip out. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't use those words at some times. I'm not saying that those words don't have a point, or that I wouldn't also say that's a great technique in that situation. So I will get to that point, but what I am going to say is it's not the way that I coach, and that we've won awards with 2 Lennox Partners of the Year to close a tremendous amount of business, gobble up market share by only doing it that way. So I'm going to share something today that I think our listening audience can take out there, and they can immediately start trying this. And it'll fit right within the framework. Even Brian, when I was down at your facility a couple of weeks ago, as I was sharing this with you and your team, I wanted to make sure this would fit within the blue collar closer group, right? And so I think, ultimately, Brian, you can reiterate or say that today on this podcast, but I think it fits perfectly as an alternative at one point in your process, as far as I understand it.
Love it.
And that's what I'm excited about, Doug. Every week we try to bring application to the podcast, to the listener, instead of just being a library. A library is only as good as the people who go in, read the books, and then exit the library. You can't just stay in there forever. And so we talked last week a lot about content consumption, which is great. Content application is what we're going to talk about this week. And so get ready to dial in on Doug's 5-part closing sequence. Why don't you set up all 5 points for us, Doug, and then we'll dive into number 1.
Yeah, and if it's okay with you, Nate, I'd like to even go a little bit back further, because we're setting up for this moment on the entire call. We're going to set up for this moment in the way that we answer our phones, the energy that we operate our business with, the passion. Right, Brian? I think you use a quote a lot from, I think it's Brian Tracy, that talks about sales as a transference of enthusiasm. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah.
I like to say, I've got one similar. I've always said emotion. I didn't know Brian Tracy had said that until I heard you say it a few times. But I love that, because I do think sales to me is 3 things. It's a transference of emotion, it's an earning of trust, and it's a lowering of risk. And as trust goes up, risk goes down. As risk is going up, trust goes down. And then both of those things are tied to the way in which we communicate, the way we're effectively communicating or not effectively communicating. So as we work our way to this 5-part closing sequence, everything that both of you are talking about with all of your guests on Waste No Day every single week that I listen to, it all applies. The energy that we show up to the building with, where we park, is our truck clean? Are we clean? Is our hair brushed? Is our shirt tucked in? Are we ready to serve this customer? Are we bright-eyed and bushy-tailed when we step into the home? Do we smell nice? Do we go through our discovery and start to listen and seek to understand? Or are we looking at that homeowner with disdain? We are earning that homeowner's trust and their confidence by the way that we behave in that home the entire time. So where we're going to bring the 5-part closing sequence in, I want you to imagine, whether you're on a service call or whether you're on a sales lead, you've probably been in the home somewhere between half an hour, an hour and a half, maybe 2, depending on your process and depending how you were called out there as a service call or a sales lead. When we get down to the end, most of us are giving 3 options. Some of us are giving 4 or 5. Some I've heard as many as 6. We don't have to change any of that process to implement what I'm going to share today. But what we are going to do, I want to paint the picture of where we're at. I want you to imagine you've been in the home, you've diagnosed the challenge, you've sized up the system of whatever you're doing, whatever trade you're in, and now you're talking through options, right? And so this is where, for example, like I got to hang out with Joe backstage, and I don't make it a habit of reading a lot of other trainers in the industry's books, but because Joe and I were going to be speaking at RILA together in Las Vegas, I did read his book, What Should We Do? So I think Joe has great content. We've got shared clients. I think Joe's a great guy. Joe, I would consider a friend of mine now. And so I don't want anyone to say, oh, and even if Joe's listening to this, I don't want anybody to go, oh, Doug's taking a shot at that. Not at all. I'm just going to give you an alternative where in between the what should we do and what do you like about this system, if price wasn't a factor, we can be doing everything that we hear. But there comes a time in my mind that we actually ask for the business. And I do that in a 5-part sequence, okay? The reason that I believe we should do this, it goes back to a Henry Ford quote. One of my favorite Henry Ford quotes is he says, if I would have asked my customer what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And that's why I was called there as a professional. I was called there to make a recommendation, not to ask them what they want or what they think, not in this moment, okay? And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to give you an analogy that I hope will maybe change some of our minds about this one moment in time on every service call and every sales lead. Now, I want you to imagine that you've been to the doctor because something about your body isn't feeling right. It's just something feels a little off. And so you went to the doctor, you had your blood drawn, you're having all these tests run, you've been healthy your entire life, but you just feel like something's off, you've been lethargic, and you go to the doctor, you get your blood drawn. And then about 3 or 4 nights later, you're just getting ready to sit down to have dinner with your kids and your spouse, and your phone rings. And you've been seeing this doctor for 15 years, he's your general practitioner, and you look at your phone and it's your doctor and you think, that's strange, it's 7:30 at night and my doctor's calling me, I better take this. And you say, hey babe, give me a second, the doctor's calling. And as you answer the phone, the doctor says something like this in this tone. Doug, are you sitting down? And I say, no, I'm just getting ready to have dinner with the kids, what's up? And he said, Doug, I want you to walk to the other room and I want you to sit down. And so the doctor's never spoken to you like that in 15 years. So you walk into the other room and you say, okay, I'm sitting down. What's the deal? He says, Doug, I need you and your wife to meet me at the office in the morning. The office opens at 8. I will be there at 6:55 to open the door. I need to meet with you before anybody else comes in, and I need you both there. Immediately, you start to say, Doc, I've got a full schedule tomorrow. And he interrupts you and he says, I didn't ask. I'll see you at 7 a.m. Now, immediately we start to feel like, whoa, something's probably not right. So I would ask the two of you, if your doctor spoke to you like that for the first time in your 15-year relationship, would you be there at 6:55 or 7 a.m. in the morning with your spouse just as you were told to?
Absolutely.
I wouldn't be hanging up the phone. We'd be having that conversation right there.
I'd want, like with that tone, right, Nate? He's got your attention. You did the blood work. So it's going to be hard to sleep anyway. It's like, Doc, let's just meet now. But
yeah, exactly.
Stay with the story, the analogy. So now you're down there first thing in the morning. You hardly slept a wink. He's there, sure enough, opens the door. He sits you down in his office, which you've never actually been at his desk. There's 2 chairs there. You're sitting there with a spouse. And he looks at you and he has his folder there and he has the results and he says, Doug, it's not good. It's stage 4. And it's metastasized into the bone. Now, here's the thing. If you want to make it to the end of the summer, and today is the middle of June, if you want to make it to the end of the summer, you're going to have to start treatment immediately. Now, we have some options. There's a group of doctors here in Denver, Colorado, right up the street that are really, really good at this. And they provide an option, and I think if you go see them, maybe you could make it through the summer. Now, there's an entire floor of doctors at the Mayo Clinic up in Minneapolis, in Rochester, just south of Minneapolis. And this is the type of cancer that they specialize in. I do believe that if you get on a flight and you get to Minnesota today or tomorrow, you could very well open some Christmas gifts with your children this Christmas. Now, there's some things that we can't do here in the States, Doug, but over in London in the UK, there is an entire hospital that focuses on exactly what you have. I want you, if you want to make it to see your daughter walk down the aisle and get married, if you want to see your kids graduate from high school, my recommendation is when you walk out of here, you and your wife go home and you get packed. You get on a plane and you land in London by tonight, by nightfall, and you start treatment in the morning. And if you do that, you might have a chance of seeing your kids graduate and maybe get married one day. Let me ask you this. How do you feel about your doctor? Now, that wasn't a 5-part close, but he made his recommendation. He gave you 3 options, and then he said you should get your butt on a plane. He didn't make it about the price. He didn't tell you how much it was going to cost. He could have even said, and I don't care what it takes, if you need to put a for sale sign out in front of your house, then that's what I would do, and I would get to London as fast as humanly possible. I would feel pretty good about my doctor in that moment. I would feel like this man means business. He spoke to me like a trusted physician, like a trusted surgeon, like I would want him to speak. Now, I want you to rewind the tape there for just a minute. I want you to imagine this. Imagine that he goes through those options. He wasn't quite as assertive, as demonstrative. He wasn't quite as clear, and he gets down to the end and he goes, "So, Doug, what do you think? What should we do? How do you feel about your doctor now?" I want my doctor in my time of need to give me the exact recommendation of what he thinks I should do. Now, to go back and say, hey, I know a lot of us are using the what should we do. Okay, so do I. So does my team, just not in this moment. And now we start to go back and forth, and then the questions, the conversation kind of comes to a lull. I could always come back out with a what should we do. I could do that as we're walking through the options now that we're going to start talking about heating, air conditioning, plumbing projects, electrical projects. So that's where we're at. Here's where we are as we go into this 5-part closing sequence. We have been in the home. We've diagnosed the entire situation. No matter what trade we're in, we're now ready to provide our options. No matter what you call them, your premium option, your mid-grade, your builder grade, your gold, your silver, your platinum, whatever it is, we're going through those options. But this is what I teach. After the dust starts to settle and we walk through that, what I have found is that there's normally a little bit of a lull where the homeowner, the customer, the prospect says something like, okay, well, it's a lot to consider. Or they might ask us, what would you do? That's where we're ending up now, Nate, where we're getting ready to start our 5-part closing sequence. I don't know if you guys have any input at this point, or I can just jump right into what I then teach as the 5 parts of the 5-part closing sequence.
Well, I can tell it's going to be good here, Doug, and certainly you've put the emotional portion of the episode here a little bit higher with that scenario. So let's dive into it. What are we going to start with?
First things first, what I want to do, and I don't call a presentation a pitch, I like to call that our professional presentation, but I am going to ask everybody to think about the game of baseball for a minute. When we start our 5-part closing sequence, when I give you part 1, it's only 5 seconds long. Part 2 is less than 2 minutes long. Part 3 is 5 seconds. Part 4 is 5 seconds. Part 5 is 5 seconds, and no more than 10. So the only part that's going to require some customization is part 2, and that's where we're going to make our recommendation. So the baseball analogy is this. When you say the line that I'm going to give us here in just a minute on part 1 in the 5-part close, I want you to imagine you have set as a baseball player on a pitcher's mound, and as you come through and let go of that ball, there is no chance to get that ball back once it's headed to the catcher's mitt, is there? In other words, when we start our 5-part closing sequence, we're going for the gusto. This should help to eliminate, as we practice this and role play this and work on this with our teams, this should help to eliminate all the confusion and the awkwardness that we have sometimes when we're afraid to ask for the order. We don't quite know where to go next. 5 steps, here we go. But once we start it, there's no turning back. And this also is not the time to introduce any new information. So, to clarify, the only time the 5-part closing sequence should be used is when we've already talked about everything regarding our company. We built the value. We've talked about our warranties and guarantees. We've already talked about different pricing. We may have already even gotten them qualified on the financing or the special promotional offers that we've got going right now. We've talked about our ultimate guarantee, okay? So this is a way to bundle it all together. So when we get ready to let go of that ball and throw it to the catcher's mitt, step 1 is where I'm going to say the words like a trusted surgeon. I'm going to straighten my spine. I'm going to go in more of a lower tone, and I'm going to say, here's what I'm going to recommend, and here's why. I like to do that in a little bit of a down tone with a cadence to signify to the prospect something just changed. The better that we get at this, sometimes we get so good at this, literally it feels like the air was just sucked out of the room. I literally want to create some tension here at a couple points in my 5-part close so that I can relieve the tension at the end and get the answer that I'm looking for. Okay, we'll get to that in just a moment. Now, if we're going through our 3 options, 6 options, whatever it is, I might say something as the conversation comes to a little lull and I'm ready to begin my sequence. I might say something like this: Nate, Brian, thank you for sharing all of that with me here today. Then I go right into part 1. Here's what I'm going to recommend, and here's why. Step 2 is going to last no more than 2 minutes because we don't want to get distracted. And the key in step 2 is we're going to make our recommendation of everything we're recommending to this prospect, and every recommendation that we make, we're going to make that recommendation emotional, right? Just as Brian always says, it's a transference of enthusiasm. I talk about a transference of emotion because the emotion right now could be everything from they're upset with their utility bill to their kids needing 3 blankets to having a dirty water, chlorine in the water. It could be lack of hot water. All those things that I've uncovered during my service call or my sales lead are going to start to reveal themselves now in step 2. All right. I'll come back to that in a minute so that we can save our time here. We'll go through the rest of the 5 and then I'll role play an entire one. Step 3 is where a lot of us get distracted, and that's where, how do I say the number? How do I say the price? On step 3 in the 5-part closing sequence, literally what we do when we get done with our recommendation is we give them the one number, and we call it the investment, not the price, not the cost, not the fee, not the charge. There's an entire episode that we did back in September of 24 on those words. I'm going to say their name, so I would say John, Jane, the total investment for everything I've shared here today is, and then let's just pick a number today, $38,765.43. As soon as I say that number, that's where it typically gets awkward for us in the home, for those of us that aren't used to asking for the order. So the first thing we do as soon as we give them that number is we build back the value. And the best value I can do to eliminate risk, because I believe sales is a transference of emotion, an earning of trust, a lowering of risk. How do I lower that risk? And giving them that big number, I'm going to say, and if everything that I have shared with you doesn't happen exactly as I've promised you that it will, and then I'm going to plug in my ultimate guarantee. If you have a 1-year buy-it-back guarantee on a full system replacement, I would say it right there. I've already communicated all about it to them. I've already talked through them. This is not the time to introduce new information. There I would say, and if everything that I've shared with you doesn't happen exactly as I've promised you that it will, we will buy that system back at 100% of your original investment. And then in my cadence, I'm going to do a little bit of a pause. I'm going to create some tension there, and then I'm going to say this. The only question I have left to ask you here today, and then I'm going to hit the one that Brian's talked about a lot. I'm either going to say, will you trust me with this recommendation? I'm going to say, will you trust me with this project? But I'm going to ask them to trust me, not my business, not my logo, not my brand, not my equipment, not the box. I'm going to make them reject me personally. It's going to be very difficult. And what we'll find when we start to master this 5-part closing sequence is 99 times out of 100, we're going to get one answer. It's a 3-letter word, and we're going to get it 99 times out of 100. Yes. Because people don't like to reject us personally. And then, no, I'm not going to say we're going to close them all, because your work is just getting started. But if we got them to say yes, then they kind of come out of the ether and they say something like, but, and then I teach my teams to sit back, to relax, to wait, because I believe there's only 4 categories of objections. There's bids, there's brand, there's stalls, and then there's price. The stalls can be divided into, is the person present or not present? Some trainers call that the unavailable party or available party. And the stalls sound like, I got to think about it, talk about it, pray about it, sleep on it. All of those things could be within that person's present, or they say, I've got to talk to somebody else about it. I've got to talk to a spouse, a neighbor, a handyman, somebody else. So if we go back to the 5-part closing sequence, we're just going to say, here's what I'm going to recommend and here's why. Then we're going to give them the benefits, emotional terms of what we're solving in their home that we've uncovered and what our products and solutions do for them. Then we're going to give them how much the investment is. We're then going to restate our ultimate guarantee. And then we're going to ask them for their trust. At that point, they're going to say, yeah, I trust you, Doug, but it's a lot more than we thought. Or we can't sign anything tonight. Or I got to talk to my spouse. And then we can sit back and we can start to categorize those and then pick those off one at a time. So that's the 5-part closing sequence. If you don't have any questions, I'll just go ahead and run through an entire one. And you guys can hear how the part 2 fills in there as well.
I love it, Doug. And go ahead, Brian.
So when you get to number 5, you're expecting the yes. You're usually going to get the yes, but the yes is not necessarily let's get started or give me that financing paperwork to fill out, right?
If somebody just says yes and then continues to sit there for another 4 or 5 seconds, I'm going to say, great. Well, let's go ahead and let's get started on the paperwork. I'm going to ask another close, right? But no, Brian, I'm going to say, I literally mean they are just mesmerized when you deliver this with passion, enthusiasm, when you're showing them and describing all the emotional benefits of what you're recommending. I mean, listen, we got to uncover those things during our discovery process and in our diagnostic, but you nailed it. No, I'm going to fall out of my chair in most situations if they just say yes and then actually buy or say, let me get my checkbook. Let me fill out that financing app. Shall I give you my Social Security now? It's not going to happen. That's why we've got to be ready to come back with our additional ways that we handle areas of concern. But there, I'm also going to say, in this space, last episode, Nate, you talked about white space. I want to create space here in the moment. I see so many of us that say, I would never want to be in hardcore, pushy, salesy type stuff. The number one thing that I see most of us do when I'm on ride-alongs, when I'm in trainings, when I bring people up to role play, is if I say, if I was the homeowner and I said, yes, Doug, I trust you, but it's a lot more than I expected. And we talked about this on our podcast that we did last September. Most people will jump right in and just start to overcome that objection. What I say right there, when we get done with our 5-part close and they start to have these concerns, this is where we show the empathy that we talked about on part 1 last week. This is where we start to say, how do I view, what is my paradigm of this person? They are scared of contractors. They're afraid we're going to rip them off. They're afraid that we're not going to do what we say we're going to do. Contractors have such a bad stereotype in the community today. So I'm not upset when they tell me they got to get bids or I'm the first one in or my price is too high. I just know this is part of my responsibility in the home. I've got to help this person bridge this gap between where they thought and hoped they would be as far as the expense of solving these challenges would be. And we've probably uncovered a lot of things they had no clue about. And then I'm going to start to do my rare listening sequence where I repeat, acknowledge the emotion they must be feeling, rephrase, relate. And then the express is when we actually start to use our closing sequence again, where we would overcome that objection or address that area of concern. Does that make sense?
So Doug, absolutely. I just want to reiterate, before you're ever entering into this conversation, you have done the education of the options. You've had lots of conversation about, the intricacies of the who's, the whys, the whats, and all that you're presenting. And so like I feel like that's extremely important prerequisite before you go into this sequence here. And you mentioned that, so I just wanted to call that out because that seems very important. With that, have you felt that when you're doing this 5-part sequence, are you holding anything? Are you eyeball to eyeball? Are you side shoulder to shoulder? What does even the physical context of the conversation look like?
For my team, when we won Linux Partner of the Year, and I know that the people listening to Waste No Day can't see this, but I literally have these giant menu-based price cards, okay? And each of these has a size up here. And so I've already sized the system. I've already done my manual J. I've already done everything I would need to do to fill out the paperwork and get this set up for installation. So I'm literally at the point where I'm going to ask them for the order. And by the way, a lot of the stuff that I hear Brian teaching on here I think is brilliant, and he could literally plug in some of those ways that he asks for the order right there in step 5. It's just literally, I'm trying to say, if I was confused about this project, just like a person confused about having cancer and having to go sit down across from the doctor who knows what's going on and is going to make a recommendation, I just get to the point where I've shared everything I could possibly share, and instead of saying, which one makes the most sense to you? There's all kinds of trial closes we could do. We could say, is there any other reason other than price that you would not choose myself and my company to handle this project for you? We could use any of those to get to this point. So yes, Nate, the main thing I want to say here is when the ball leaves our hand from the pitcher's mound, if you turn and try to throw it to first just as it gets ready, that's called a balk, right? And the batter's going to take their base. So what I want to do is I want to bring it to the plate. I want to serve this up on a silver platter. And I want to be like that trusted surgeon that says, I believe in my product. I believe in my recommendation. This is why you called me here. It doesn't matter if they live in a $10 million home on the hill, right? And it doesn't matter if you're a 19-year-old technician in your first year in the industry. You know more than the guy living in the $10 million mansion on the hill about his plumbing and his electrical or his HVAC project. If he knew how to do it, he'd do it, right? And so I think it does come down to having the confidence to say this, but if we practice it, if we role play it, and we do it over and over and over again, like when we were talking about consuming just inordinate amounts of information, how about this one is only 2.5 minutes long? How about just 2.5 minutes for 3 or 4 hours a day? Listening, practicing, saying it out loud, saying it to your shower head, saying it to your lawnmower, saying it to your dog on a walk. If we'll do that, it starts to get really, really simple. So as I go through it, one of the things I want to make sure that you listen for what I'm talking about here. As I go through this, we've been like what we would call a brilliant conversationalist. Zig Ziglar used to say, those that can't close are going to have skinny kids, right? Meaning you wasn't bringing home the bacon, okay? So we got to close business. And in order to do that, we got to earn trust, lower risk, and have this transference of emotion. That's what we're doing here. So when I say we're going to suck the air out of the room, I want it to get serious because everything up till now has been all fun and games. Believe it or not, you will get to a point in your career, if you're not there yet, where you realize it truly was just a fun conversation all along the way until you actually ask somebody to exchange your service for their money, okay? So when I say, here's what I'm going to recommend and here's why, I'm going to change my tone and I'm going to get more serious, even if I've been kind of happy-go-lucky and very friendly the entire time. Part 2, I want to have gained information through my discovery process about the family, about how they would use my products or services. I want to uncover challenges because I got to be honest with you. If you don't want to be a high-pressure, pushy salesman, how in the world are you going to recommend things that you haven't uncovered challenges for? So as I go through and I role play one of these, I want you to realize the only way I could role play it the way I'm about to do it is if I uncovered these things during my process. I've also had to have either swiped on my software on my iPad or my tablet and shown them a couple of different options, right? So no matter what software you're using, if you're on print, like I used to have the laminated giant price cards, however you're showing your options, you would have already shown all the options. And then we've already talked about our ultimate guarantees. So that's where we are now. And that means that no new information can be introduced at this moment. It's all one ball coming to the catcher's mitt at home plate, and it's all a sequence I'm not introducing anything new, and I'm not trying to take any questions at this time. It's literally 2.5 minutes at tops.
Perfect. All right, great setup.
Okay.
Let's hear the role play.
Okay. So let's just say that, let's do a whole home water purification. Or maybe we could do, I'm kind of an HVAC guy. Maybe you want me to do HVAC first? What do you guys think?
Some indoor air quality.
Okay. So this is going to be, you could say this is either going to be a sales lead. You could say this is going to be, what did you choose? Did you choose HVAC with some indoor air quality?
Yeah, let's do not a system. Let's do a nice indoor air quality package. Electronic filter, UV light, HEPA, like clean and seal, whatever products.
Okay. And then because
$12,000 system.
I'm going to sell everything in the kitchen sink. All right. So I'm going to
There
do,
you
just
go.
so that anybody, I'm going to do like a full furnace AC system. Does that work for you guys?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So I've been in the house. The conversation comes to a little bit of a lull. And I say, and I'm going to role play with John and Jane Smith. Well, John, Jane, thank you for sharing all of that information with me. Here's what I'm going to recommend, and here's why. I'm going to recommend that we move forward with the 99% efficient variable speed furnace and a 25 SEER variable capacity air conditioner. Now, this is the system that's going to help even out those hot and cold spots that you described as making your home nearly unbearable to live in. And because there is not a sufficient amount of return air upstairs, and it would be a significant investment to get one up there, I'm also going to recommend that for that portion, we invest in a ductless mini split for your master bedroom. Now, installing this ductless unit will allow us to ensure that the temperature in your master suite remains within 1 degree of your desired set point at all times, day or night, no matter how cold or how hot it is outside. Your primary suite is no longer going to feel like an oven every night during the summer. You're going to be able to get a great night's sleep, waking up feeling refreshed and ready to conquer your day, even being well rested enough to hit the gym, like you said you'd been wanting to on the way home from work. Now, John, you're also going to begin getting a better night's rest when you're home from your travel. And you're going to do so more consistently than you've done in the last decade that you and Jane have lived here. With better rest, I believe that you're going to be able to really manage that stress you were sharing with me about your demanding career. And when you come home from your next trip that seemingly you said never ends, you're going to feel like you've walked into your very own sanctuary. And I also wanted to chat with you both about Ethan's room. You said that Ethan is no longer wanting to be able to freeze at night, and we're going to install this variable speed system because his room over the garage with 3 exposed walls simply does not heat up like the rest of the home in the winter, and it does not cool down. You are no longer going to have to pile 3 blankets on top of Ethan, and you're going to be able to remove that space heater that could be very dangerous at any given time in there. And speaking of children, I'm also going to recommend the whole house steam humidifier that we chatted about earlier, especially for your daughter, Jordan. Now, this is going to provide you the perfect level of humidity to your home during the winter. And in addition to protecting your wood floors and everyone in the house having softer skin and nicer hair and not remaining itchy all winter long, John, Jane, I believe it's going to make you two feel like mommy and daddy of the year when Jordan never comes down those stairs again with one of those terrible, terrible bloody noses. The total investment, this entire system, is $38,765.43. And if everything that I have shared with you tonight doesn't happen exactly as I've promised you that it will, we will buy that system back at 100% of your original investment. John, Jane, the only question I have left to ask you, will you trust me with this project? So Brian, Nate, will you trust me with the project?
I can't. I mean, Doug, obviously we trust you,
Well done.
buddy. I mean, this is, I can't think of anyone else we'd trust with the project, but this is, I mean, you know, like we were thinking we were out a couple $100 here for this repair. You're talking about 30 grand.
So, in the time we have remaining, if you want, I'll handle all the objections we can. But I want to say this for anybody listening that said, I don't have a 1-year test drive buy it back guarantee, I'm going to recommend you just switch that out with Move Heaven and Earth. So, Brian, hit me with whatever objection and watch what I'm doing. I want everybody to relax. If you take this rather than disdain and have more empathy, if you start to jump in the hole with this person and say, wow, it really is cold in here, it's dark, it's scary, that's what I want you to do next. That's what I'm going to recommend. So I'm going to pick right back up at step 3, Brian, so that it doesn't sound like I'm avoiding role play here, because I absolutely love role play. And what I'm going to be doing is when Brian says, yeah, Doug, I trust you, which is what he said, then I'm going to categorize his concern. Is it a bids? Is it a brand? Is it a stall? Or is it a price? Now, in this situation, because I recommended all this, I was kind of assuming we were on a sales lead, so they had me out to give them a free and guaranteed proposal. This could also happen on a service call, but they would have already known. I would have been showing them $38,000 systems, 28, 15. I would have talked about just replacing the furnace or the tankless or whatever. So, Brian, hit me with whatever objection. The main thing I want to share with the audience is I'm not even trying to overcome his objection. I'm not trying to address his area of concern until I have sufficiently breathed, and knock something off my table here, until I have sufficiently breathed life into his concern, into his objection, helping him to feel heard, seen, understood. But I am not, if you go back and listen to our episode last year, I am not going to say the words, I understand. I'm going to repeat. I'm going to rephrase. I'm going to relate. I'm going to relate. I'm not going to say understand, and I'm going to acknowledge emotions. And I'm just going to try to have Brian or Nate or both of you talk to me about this. In fact, instead of me selling to John and Jane here, why don't you guys be brothers that own a house? And I'll just say, Brian, Nate, and that way you can both hit me with objections. Okay?
Nate enjoys playing Mrs. Burton, so we're just going to do that.
I know. I didn't want to do that to Nate.
It's been.
He just emailed me that he couldn't wait to do that. So
Such a handsome young lady. So you want to be Jane? No. Okay. So we're going to pick back up on step 3. So I've outlined the entire system, and now and this time I'm going to do a heaven and earth close. It's a catch-all, and I don't have to get all crazy with my warranties and guarantees if I don't have a buy it back. Main thing is I want to lower risk in this moment. I'm going to bring this to a crescendo, and I'm going to ask for the order. And then if I'm trained and I have practiced all the different ways that I handle the concerns and I breathe life into the objections, I'm not afraid. This actually is what you guys talk a lot about here on Waste No Day. We're gamifying this. The game begins for me when I say, will you trust me? And then the homeowner, the prospect says, yes, I do, but, and that's what I was waiting for. That's what I'm expecting. That's what I'm gearing and programming my mindset for. And that's why I got to get lathered up before every call. I got to walk in there with energy. I got to make sure that I'm prepared. Okay. So let's start back at step 3. So step 1, here's what I recommend. Here's why. Step 2, all the different things that we're solving, the challenges, the emotions that we're taking care of there. And then I say this, the total investment for everything we've just outlined is $38,765.43. And if everything that I've shared with you here today doesn't happen exactly as I've promised you that it will, we will move heaven and earth until we make things right. Brian, Nate, the only question I have left for you both is, will you trust me with this project?
certainly make a compelling case, Doug. And I'm man, I love what I'm seeing here and everything you talked about. But we were thinking we were going to be around a quarter of this price today. So
yeah, I mean, I didn't even know half these things were a problem. Like,
Yeah.
honey, clear your throat. Honey. Get some water. You sound a little raspy.
Not doing it. Nope, not doing it. I didn't even know half these things were a problem, Doug. I mean, like, obviously you're well versed and you know what you're talking about, and so I certainly appreciate you bringing these things to our attention. But
Yeah.
I feel like this is a large investment. We probably got to
Yeah.
think about this and talk to some other
Yeah.
people before we would pull the trigger.
Yeah, it really is. It certainly is a significant investment, Nate, in order to do the job right. It sounds like you both have a number of concerns. Brian, I think I heard you share that this was, you were thinking about a quarter, is that right? 25%, if I heard you right? You were thinking
Yeah,
25%. So just roughly, it sounds like maybe you weren't planning on investing any more than around $10,000. I mean, we're close to 40.
Yep.
And Nate, it sounds like a lot of this, what we've discovered here in your home and the equipment that's out of warranty and the things that were happening within your home to cause these hot and cold spots, the lack of humidity here in the Colorado region, the bloody noses, sounds like that you just weren't aware that maybe even a lot of those things could be solved with a heating and air conditioning company. Is that right?
Yeah, it's not that. Obviously, we know that there's been some issues, but I mean, we're just kind of taking your word for it that, yeah, I mean, these things are going to fix themselves. Obviously, we care about the home and the family and all that stuff, but I don't know. It's just a lot to take in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. I can only imagine how you two are feeling. I mean, I've been in some similar situations before as a homeowner myself, but honestly, I can't imagine how you two are feeling, and it sounds like this has kind of caught you off guard. Most of the time when we're doing this with homeowners and uncovering some of these challenges and providing solutions that can solve some of these things in the home, customers are a little bit caught off guard, and they certainly didn't realize what was going to go into the investment. A lot of times our customers have shared with us when a situation like this arises that when they're not ready to move forward, it's usually one of three things. Either number one, they have some additional questions that have not yet been answered. Number two, they're not quite sure if the solution that we've recommended will actually solve the challenges in their home. And number three, it is just a significant investment. In fact, quite a bit more than what they were thinking. Brian and Nate, let me ask you this. Which one of those do you think it is for the two of you? Do you have some additional questions, or do you not think that the solution that we've designed together will solve the challenges that we've outlined? Or is it just about the price?
Listen, the number is a big number. Like I don't care what we're buying, it's a big number. And frankly, some of the stuff feels a little bit too, as seen on TV, if you catch my drift.
Sure.
And I'm not familiar with some of these solutions, and I'd kind of like to do a little bit of research myself to see what that's like.
Sure. And Brian, how about you? It sounds like Nate's not quite sure if maybe we've over recommended and we need to back a few of those things out. I mean, some of these things could be done after the fact. Is that similar for you, Brian, or do you have additional questions? Do you think the system will work, or is it just about the price?
No, I like everything we talked about. Just for me, it's the number. It's just
It's a big
significantly bigger number than I had in my head.
Yeah. Brian, Nate, let me ask you this, because it is a significant number and it often catches folks off guard. When you think about solving all of those challenges and to have it done right, how much too much is it? We're at $38,765. How much too much is it?
Well, I would say I didn't realize we needed all of this stuff, and I do like it for the most part. But again, the figure is just so high. I would think probably half that.
Half that. So
we could probably comfortably do. Yeah, we just weren't
Quite a
expecting to buy a car today.
quite a bit more. Yeah. Nate, same for you, about half.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, frankly, I don't even have a reference point on some of these things. I mean, last time we made any investment in our HVAC system was 10 years ago, and it sure didn't look like that number.
Yeah. Yeah. Typically, it does tend to be a lot more. And then I'm going to jump out of the role play here really quick. because I wouldn't want anyone listening today think that I'm going to be a high pressure pushy closer. What I would do there most of the time, if I was on a sales lead, I'm there. That's why I presented the entire thing, full system replacement, all those things. I'm going to build up these different options. If somebody started telling me you don't need all these things, I would immediately say, so it sounds like a little bit more of number 2. You maybe feel like we've actually over recommended. In fact, Nate, if you could, and I would repeat back to him, or I would literally get him, because this is where we can start to feel disdain for our customer. Because Nate, what was it you said? You said, you kind of insulted me a little bit there. What was that? Do you remember when you were talking about I recommended too much, or
yeah, I kind
how
of
did
said
you put
something
it?
along the lines of like I wasn't even aware half of these things were an issue, and I'm not even like this is kind of as seen on TV. This is a little too good to be true.
As
It's
seen on
just gonna
TV,
make
that was it.
all of our things are going to go away. All the problems are going to go away.
So
Yeah.
you know, Nate would absolutely say something like that to you in his house.
And listen, that's where we, as technicians, comfort advisors, project managers, we've got to be ready for that. And we can't get upset by that. We can't take our ball and go home. We just got to work through this. So if I was walking through that, and this would be a great time to implement your reverse engineering close, Brian, where we could start to paint the picture of, well, do you not think that Jordan's room, do you not want to take care of the bloody noses? We don't have to do the steam humidifier. We could remove this situation here. The other thing that we haven't talked about right now is most of the time before I go into my 5-part closing sequence, if I'm on a sales lead, especially I've already talked about the special promotional offers, what most people would call financing. In that 5-part closing sequence, in 3, I could have said $38,765, or as a monthly investment, $387 a month. Now I could come back if you've already talked to me about the budget, but here's where it normally happens. Normally you're going to say it's too much. Now I would just come back. I would say things like this. You know, most of our customers don't realize it was going to be that much. But when you look at the life of this system, perfectly installed, with a company like ours, run by a business owner like Ted that we've described, a company that puts highly skilled, highly trained technicians into your home, carries the right amount of workers' comp, liability insurance, and we're solving these challenges that, as you both have shared, you didn't even know that we could take care of. Some of these things we can come back and do. We could just focus on the furnace and air conditioner, or would it make more sense for you to do all of them at once? Or should I back some of those things out and work on doing a partial system right now with just the furnace and AC, and we can look at doing some of those other things later? Which one of those would you two prefer?
Yeah, and that's where you're kind of helping me understand that while this is your recommendation, there's still option here for me as the homeowner. We can still customize, we can still talk about things. Plus, I feel like I did you a bit of a disservice in the role play. Like, you would have done your fair shake on educating me, and obviously we had conversations about Susie's nosebleeds and, you know, Johnny's cold room and all that type of stuff, to the degree where saying I didn't even know these things could be solved is probably an unrealistic role play, because you would have already had that education with me.
Listen, everything is fair in love and war. In other words, everything is fair in role play. We should never be caught off guard on a role play. But you're right, Nate. I mean, sometimes when we role play, and you and Brian can attest to this, sometimes we try to be the one in the million. But I'm going to say this. As I went through my options, right, my 3 options on my iPad, through my Service Titan, my whatever, if I did it on my laminated card, I wouldn't have gotten down and went into my 5-part closing sequence recommending that if I hadn't gotten a lot of agreement that they wanted all of the bells and whistles and to solve all those challenges. So now what's more typical to happen is, and listen, I'm not phased at all, because I'm there to serve this customer. And of course we could come back and do the steam humidifier, the return air. We could come back and do a UV bulb later. What I'm probably going to really work on with this customer, if they had me out to provide an estimate, which I'm going to wordsmith to a free and guaranteed proposal, I want to make sure that I give them the proposal to solve all their challenges. But if they say, well, we just don't need all that, I'm immediately going to pull my iPad back out. I'm going to go to my other option, right? Now, remember earlier in the role play about the when I was sick, I could either go to Denver, I could go to the Mayo Clinic, or I could go to London. They weren't telling me I had to go anywhere, but I gave those options. So now in this situation, Nate, if we had this real life scenario, I'm simply going to back off my options. I'm going to start just having a conversation because I'm literally going to say, it sounds like you both have a few questions. It's definitely a lot more of an investment than what you'd anticipated. On the monthly investment, we are at about the 377 number. And you had shared with me you had budgeted 500, but it still sounds like it's the total investment that's kind of got you guys a little bit unsure if this is the way to move forward. Is that right? Then I'm just going to come back and I'm going to start to unwind the deal and say, listen, I recommended a 99% variable speed, high efficiency furnace with a 25 SEER high variable capacity air conditioner. I can start backing that out. I can start saying, it sounded like it was really important for you to save a ton of money on your utilities. This 20 SEER unit is an incredible unit. We can also back off the 99% down to a 95. We could still go with the sealed combustion with a 90% efficient furnace. I'm just going to start talking through all that. And then I'm going to say, does that system, a more economical solution, sound like the one that is best for you? Would that make more sense to you? And we could come back and do the steam humidifier. Now I'm going to have my company policies where I'm going to talk about what have I got in writing as to how long I will guarantee that investment on that steam humidifier or that return air. So all of those things are options. But I mean, listen, I appreciate you kind of, I don't know, being nice there, Nate. It's not your personality to be nice.
Thanks, Doug.
I knew I could get Brian laughing on that one. But here's the thing. If I got down to the end now, and let's just say that I had talked through all that, you guys give me your $10,000 too much. Okay? I mean, that's significant, right? You almost said that. I'm at 38. You said it's half. If I came back and I said, so you're sharing with me, I'm about $10,000 too much. Is that right? This is if you told me it was just price, that you like the system. And you're going to say, go ahead and, if you want to jump in there, Brian or Nate, just role play it. So you guys are saying we're significantly more. How much more would you say we are than you could really even have imagined before I got here today?
Well, again, we were picturing the one piece of equipment that we were going to be replacing, and we're adding all these things on. So I can't say just on that piece of equipment you're any more than I expected. It's just the whole number is 4 times what I expected.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot more than most folks are expecting. So it sounds like we're at least $10,000 higher if you were to replace everything, do all the bells and whistles, take care of the UV, the steam humidifier, all those things that we talked about with the variable speed, the high efficiency, the utility savings. Are we still about $10,000 higher than what you thought?
Yeah, 10 to 15.
Okay. When you were thinking about that, it sounds like you were thinking about being in just the $10,000 range just to replace the furnace. And now, as we've shared, there's just not really a way to do the job right with your system being over 25 years old for us to come in here and solve all these challenges like you've outlined that you'd like us to. Brian and Nate, when you think about that difference, let's just say it's $10,000 for the full system versus what you could have imagined. That $10,000 over the life of the system, I'm talking about when installed properly by our technicians with all of our warranties and guarantees, the nitrogen purge, the filter dryer, everything that we do to make sure that you and your family are protected. That $10,000 over the life of the system with a life expectancy of over 20 years here in Denver, it works out to be about $10 a week. Do you think that having the peace of mind of choosing a contractor like us with over 500 5-star reviews, the kind of company that's taking care of our customers, like in some of the letters that we shared with you here today, the kind of company that makes sure that you and your family are protected and stands behind their work with a 1-year test drive, do you think all of that, the peace of mind, might just be worth $10 a week? The cost of a couple of gallons of gas?
Well, when you put it that way, Doug, yeah, it would be ridiculous to say no.
I think you guys are going to be very pleased with this new system. I tell you what, why don't we go ahead and reach out to my installation manager? Let's pick out an installation date. We'll get all the paperwork tidied up. And if anything I've promised you here doesn't happen exactly as I've shared with you that it will, and this system doesn't operate exactly as we've promised, we'll buy it back at 100% of your investment. Fair enough?
What do you
Fair
think,
enough.
sweetie?
I have 2 points of clarity there, Doug.
Okay.
So number one, when you're doing the initial, before you go into the 5-part sequence and you're doing the initial review of the options, whether it's 3, 5, 6, 10, I don't care. Are you showing price at that moment?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. So I know that the viewers can't see this, but for you guys, when I bring out my price cards, just like if you pulled up your Service Titan, I'm showing them the monthly investment. I'm showing them the total investment on the air conditioner, the furnace, and I'm going all the way down to my builder grade model over here that I would recommend, for a landlord or something like that in that situation. And the entire time we're talking through this, I mean, this is like a 15-minute process, probably minimum, where we're introducing all of the solutions to everything that we've uncovered. We're talking through all of the different investments. I've got all of those bubbles there. So even if you were on the iPad, you could be showing them, this is our platinum, this is our premier package, this is our gold, this is our silver, whatever the names of your packages are. And you're talking about the price, and I'm asking them questions. I'm asking them trial closes. I'm asking them, so you do feel like you would want to save that amount on your utilities. Here's the size of the unit. This is a 99% efficient furnace. And of course, I'm living here in Denver, so I'm role playing that a lot. I would not recommend that if I was down there in, where Brian is in Phoenix. I'm not going to be telling people they need a 99% efficient. I'm also probably going to hedge a little bit on talking them through in that 15 minutes about a 25 SEER heat pump in Denver. I mean, that's what I have in my house, but it's, of course, a Lennox, and, I had my own contracting business, so I went with the best because, we had it. So, yes, absolutely, Nate. Before I go into my 5-part closing sequence, everything is done. All I'm doing is saying, here's another tool in our tool bag to pull this out when we're not quite sure about how we bring up the money. How do we state the price? How do we ask for the order? This is how we do it. Here's what I'm going to recommend, and here's why. Boom, boom, boom. Here's the emotional benefits. Boom, boom, boom. The total investment is, now let's just say you're on a service call. The total investment is $875 in order to, like now we're just selling an igniter or, a capacitor or something else. So I'm going to say the total investment is $875. If everything that I've shared with you here doesn't happen exactly as I've promised you that it will, we'll move heaven and earth to make things right. The only question I have left for you, Brian and Nate, will you trust me with this recommendation? Now we're talking about $875. But now we never again have to have our team scared in the home or worried about looking silly if we will just practice this and we just say, this is what we do. Here's what I'm going to recommend and here's why. I'm going to recommend this repair. I'm going to recommend this optional repair. I'm going to recommend this accessory. These are the things it's going to solve and the total investment on that. And then, by the way, right there, I'm also going to be able to say, I also recommend that you move forward with our family club membership, right? And that's going to be $19 a month. The total one-time investment is $38,765.43. And the monthly investment for the family membership is $19.95. And then I'm going to go right into my number 4. If everything I promise you doesn't happen exactly as I've shared with you that will, we'll move heaven and earth. Will you trust me with the project? So again, there should be nothing left uncovered by the time you start into your sequence, right? And so, great question, Nate. Role play is always interesting, and that's why I tried to set it up and say, I'm coming home to plate with the ball, but everything has been covered. I've been in that home an hour to 3 hours, and now it's just kind of like they're hemming and hawing, and so now I'm just going to bring it to this crescendo and say, here's what I recommend. And listen, that's my recommendation. I don't have to go to London. I don't have to go to the Mayo Clinic. I don't have to go to Denver. I can always get a second opinion. But I can also say, well, tell me a little bit more about the doctors in Minnesota. In the home here with what we're selling, I can say, Nate, it sounds like you feel like perhaps if this sounds like a little too good to be true, like as seen on TV, perhaps I've misunderstood what it was that you and Jane were looking for. And perhaps I've recommended a little bit too much system. Nate, if I'm hearing you right, it sounds like maybe what you're sharing with me is you and Jane don't need the Ferrari or the Bentley or the Rolls-Royce of heating and air conditioning. It sounds like what you're looking for is a little bit more of a more economical solution that would still help to save you on some of your utilities. It would also get that upstairs primary cooled off, but maybe we hold off on the mini split and we see if this variable speed unit will help to alleviate some of those challenges that you and Jane are having in the upstairs primary. It's also going to help to heat up Ethan's room and not require you to have those 3 blankets on him all winter, and for sure be able to help remove that space heater that can be very dangerous and that you and Jane have a lot of concerns about in Ethan's room. Is that the kind of system that sounds like it would make a little more sense to you, Nate? We're talking about, instead of a high efficiency variable speed unit, we're going to replace your current furnace with an 80% efficient furnace, still with the variable speed motor to mix up all that air in the home. And then we're also going to have a lower SEER on the air conditioner. We could bring that all the way down to 14 to get you a really economical solution. Does that sound like a little bit more of what you were looking for?
Yeah, I appreciate the opt out there, Doug. And that brings me to the second point of clarity I was looking for, which is around which package you are recommending. Are you always recommending the most expensive premium option out of all the presentation? Is there logic to having an overemphasized option where you actually recommend against it, saying that this is something we could do, but I would not recommend doing it as it is too much, and you kind of recommend down psychologically? Talk to us through that.
There for a minute, Nate, I thought we were friends, and now he's trying to paint me into a corner and get me to recommend the all the bells and whistles no matter what their budget is. And then you were really nice to me there at the end. All right, here's the thing. Yes, I do believe that there is a value in having a very high premium quality system that, yes, you could price condition them with and show them what the Ferrari, what the Lamborghini, the Rolls-Royce of the industry is. Absolutely. I'll give you an example. If I was in Denver, our guys at the time when I had my Lennox dealership, 98%, it was the SLP 98. Now they have the 99% efficient. We sold so many 98% efficient furnaces, and we sold occasionally a 25 SEER heat pump. But most of our customers were going for something like the 16, the 18, or the 20 SEER. Why? For those of you that have never lived in Colorado, it is just so perfectly nice. Literally, it can be 100 degrees during the day. And by the time we get to 7:30 or 8 o'clock at night in the middle of the summer, you can throw your windows open. 72-degree air is blowing through the house. I mean, we only have to run our air conditioners heavily for about 6 to 8 weeks out of the year. By the time about August 22nd or so gets here, we are past summer, and the summer really doesn't set in until right about now, second week of June, right? First, second week of June. So in answer to your question, Nate, I'm always going to show them that, because there are customers out there, they just want the best. And I'm not going to not offer them that. But what I would say is I'm also going to recommend a solution to every single challenge that I can uncover. That's what I'm going to recommend to solve all those challenges. The homeowner is probably doing what I call their fiduciary responsibility from the moment I get in the house till the moment I ask for the order, and every moment when I'm going through the addressing their concerns. I don't know if they're telling me the truth. In fact, I have to be the judge that, you know what? I'm not going to be upset with them. I'm not going to have disdain for them. They have a fiduciary responsibility to get the most for the least. We all do, whether we're buying a used car for our 16-year-old kid, whatever it is. We're going to try to get the most for our dollar because we work hard for our money. I just say our homeowner's no different. So if I get down to the end and you guys are telling me I'm twice as much, 4 times as much as what you thought, I'm not surprised. But when I'm trying to say how much too much is it, usually people will give me a price because they think I'm going to drop my price. And I don't teach price dropping. I don't think it's necessary. I think there's about 70% of the marketplace, somewhere between 65 and 70% of the market, that will pay premium dollars because they want to solve challenges. But it does not mean that those 60 or 70% of the marketplace that will buy the Rolls-Royce of your products and services aren't going to ask you for a discount. In fact, I would say count on it. Most people are going to ask for a discount. So to summarize my answer to you, Nate, I would say I'm absolutely going to show them everything that's possible because they might decide that's what they want in their home. It's for their family, their kids. They get to choose how they spend and invest their money. Then I'm going to give them the mid-tier and I'm going to give them, the builder grade, but I'm going to be very, very clear about what they're not going to get. I don't want to sell against my mid-grade or my more economical solution so hard that they would think it's crap. Right? I don't want them to think that. And I would never use the word cheap. That's why I'm calling it a more economical solution, because that sounds good. It's economical, and it's still a solution. But when I get down to the end, I've got all kinds of room, if not meaning dropping my price, but for different options. I can mix and match. We got to know our AHRs. We got to do those matchups. And usually your software can do all that stuff for you these days. But I'm going to get down to the end with 100% confidence that we're going to be able to come to an agreement on something, whether it's top of the line, middle of the road, or if they want to go at the bottom. Now, I'm also going to say this. This is an absolute must. If you're in the home promoting all of those options with all the variable speed, the mixing up the air, the helping to eliminate the stratification, all those things, the water quality, the electrical, whatever we're doing, whatever trade we're in, and they don't choose the top of the line system, we have some work to do. We have to protect the organization that we work for. And so now what we've got to do is we've got to put that in writing that is not part of this agreement. Otherwise, the homeowner is going to hear what they want to hear. The customer is going to come back to you next summer and say, this doesn't do what you said it was going to do. My utility bills didn't lower by 20%. My upstairs primary suite is still roasting. And it's like, well, you didn't take me up on the ductless mini split up there that I said would keep the temperatures within 1 degree of set point, no matter how hot or how cold. You also decided to hold off on the return air from the basement to the upstairs suite. You also decided to go with an 80% single stage furnace where we were recommending a 99% variable speed and a high capacity variable speed air conditioner. And so we've got to make sure that we protect the organization from the 1-star reviews, the people threatening, the BBB, all the, the attorney general, and that stuff will happen. So if you do reduce your offer, we got to make sure that we put that in writing. And then what I would always do with my team is say, give them a guarantee on how long that's good for, right? So now imagine this. Somebody gives you a 1-star review, says, yeah, I had this company out here. I spent $28,000 with them, and my primary suite is still baking in the summer. Well, now we get to go back to them and say, well, yeah, it shows here that Johnny outlined that we needed to put a ductless mini split in there. At the very least, we needed to add upstairs return 2 levels, and you opted here to do neither. Great news is Johnny was able to secure that investment amount for a period of whatever. You could do 6 months, 3 months, 12 months, whatever you want to do. If you have a 1-year test drive, I'd rather, for me, I know prices are fluctuating and usually going up by a lot, and it's happening multiple times a year. For me to hedge against the 1-star review and the threat of the attorney general and all that nonsense, I'm just going to put it in writing and guarantee it for 12 months because that's the length of my 1-year test drive. So that's the way I would handle that.
I like the concept of the recommendation, Doug. I think there's so much power in that, and really, I think that the general technician, plumber, electrician, tradesperson undervalues themselves to the degree that they don't think their recommendation carries the weight that it does, or that it should. And probably that's where we should start, really, with the fact that your recommendation should carry weight. It needs to carry weight. You have to believe that your recommendation is valuable, that it has merit, that it has purpose to the homeowner. If you believe in all of those types of things, number one, you'll present differently. You'll present with confidence. Like that doctor who's telling you, listen, Doug, you can do whatever you want, man, but if I was you, I'd be packing my bags and going to London.
That's right.
That means something.
Yeah. And by the way, some people, they don't understand or they don't agree with me saying the amount down to the penny. I only do that the first time, and I only do that in my 5-part close. After that, I bring it down to like the $38,765. The reason I'm doing it to the penny, I do think it changes the way we feel about our recommendation. The energy that's transferred from us to that potential client When I say it down to the penny, what I teach is the grandmother rule is if you wouldn't recommend this to your very own grandmother that you love dearly, you sure as heck better not recommend it to our customer. And so when I say something down to the penny, what I say is say that number, Nate, like you agree and believe in it with every ounce of your soul, that you believe it's worth it down to the penny. And when we communicate in that way, down to the dollar, down to the penny, we don't just say 38,000 and some change, because then it just seems like, oh, we're just kind of throwing spaghetti against the wall and hope it sticks. I want the homeowner to believe that is down to the penny, right? And so that's one of the reasons that I'm doing that, because it's going to change the way we do our cadence. And when I say the total investment is, and then I'm going to say whatever it is, $1,232.12. And then I'm going to hit them with the guarantee. And I'm going to say, and if everything I promised you here today doesn't happen exactly as I've shared with you that it will, we will. And then whatever my guarantee is, even if it's a 30-day guarantee on a part, whatever I've talked about beforehand, I just plug that in right there, whatever my best guarantee is. And I ask for the business. And you're right. I think if we will just practice that, if we're concerned about, oh my gosh, these prices are so high and I'm a little bit shy, or I'm an introvert, or I'm not self-confident, if we will just practice this, we can fake it like we are, because we'll get so good at making a recommendation. And that's what they want from us. And even if you're 18 or 19 years old out there running service calls, they want you to act like a badass. They want you to act like you're assertive and that you're concerned for them, but that you know what you're doing. They don't want us to be shy looking at our shoes and doing all that stuff. And so, I mean, listen, I used to be an introvert. Brian, I've heard your story coming out of the area of Detroit and what you used to be like when you were working for 32 grand. We all were there, right? The more we practice this, right? And the other thing I will say is, if we go back to part one and we talk about hacking our mind, knowledge gives us confidence. And so the more knowledge we have and the more that we learn and the more well-read we become, even if that means well-listened, and we're just listening for half an hour or an hour a day at 2x, man, I'm telling you, you will be amazed at the confidence that will grow within you within just a few short weeks, months, or a year. You will be a completely different person. You listen at 2x for a half hour or an hour a day, you will be a different person. You will carry yourself differently. And our potential customers will feel it. They'll see it. Our eye contact will be better. The way we present will be better. We won't be running scared.
It's funny that you brought up Brian Tracy's quote that I've been using for 20-ish years. Selling is a transfer of enthusiasm. I wrote that on the board Monday morning of this week at our Phoenix team. And I said that's the last time I'm going to use this quote. I'm never going to use this again, because true selling is a transfer of, and then I replaced enthusiasm with conviction. And as I sat here and I'm just scribbling on my notepad and going off on everything you're talking about, what I really wanted, if I was just, what do you call that? When you just close your eyes and let your hand write and see what comes out. What do they call that? Freehand or
That's probably a question for Nate. Nate's by far the smartest in the room.
He just proved you way wrong there, Doug.
What did he say? What did you call it, Nate?
Doodling.
Doodling. Oh, dang it, Nate. You've been my hero until this moment.
Yeah, it's fine.
So the word that would have come out the whole time you were role playing would have been conviction. The Ed Milet talks about the difference between poor salespeople and great salespeople. The poor salespeople believe that you have to convince the client what you're talking about, to believe what you're talking about. And he said, great people understand that all they have to convince the client of is that I believe what I'm talking about. The most confident, most convicted person wins. And the 5-part closing sequence is phenomenal. It's a great process. I believe you could take, what should we do? We could go through we did an episode on this where we took some of our favorite closing questions by sales training superstars
Yeah.
like yourself.
You
And
dropped my name in that one. Thank you. It was very kind of you.
Yeah, I believe you could take any one of those closing questions and probably convert at the same percentage based on how confident you're presenting and how convicted you are when you talk about these things. It's if you get most guys to role play, especially the ones at the shops that don't role play, but most people, especially the younger guys, this is a skill that you learn. This is not a talent that you're born with. The lack of conviction that comes out makes it so hard to want to give you a check as a homeowner. I don't believe you believe what you're saying. And if you just go back and listen to him role playing again and even ignore the words, listen to the passion and the confidence that's just spewing out of Doug while he's doing this thing. It's one of the best role plays we've had on here.
Thank you, Brian. And I would ask you, I don't know if you'd be willing to do this, Brian. I don't want to put you on the spot on your own show, but I mentioned that I
feel
believe.
Like you do.
I mean, listen,
Go ahead,
Brian,
Doug. We'll
honestly, you are perhaps the best. I know how hard I work at this stuff. I've never met anybody personally that works harder at this stuff than you do. I really mean that. I'm not just buttering you up. I've been so impressed with you, and that's why I've listened to all your episodes. You guys are both amazing, and what you're doing for the trades is incredible. But what I'd love for you to do, Brian, is if you just started at step 3, and you just said, we can just pick a number. We could say it's 5,000, 400, whatever. By the way, anytime I role play, here's a little trick that I do. I always just name the big number, the first number, and then it's always descending order. So if you think about the number I picked today, it's 3, and then it's an 876543. What that does is in role play, it allows us to not look away, because the last thing we want to do when we say the price, this goes to the emotion that's transferred. This goes to the conviction. This goes to all of what you just said, Brian. We've got to make sure that when we say that number, I believe we say it down to the penny, because if we believe in it with our soul, we should say it to the penny, because it's worth that last penny, because we're not going to discount it. Number 2, when I get down there and say it, I've got to look them in the eye. There's no way I can break eye contact at the moment I say the number. So anytime in role play, I'm always saying, you pick your number. If it's a $700 repair, it's going to be $765.43. If it's an $18,000 system, $28,000 system. And then if we're really role playing, like we put together a system in our software, and then I have it there, I've got to then in my role play, I've got to practice it and show it to the homeowner in my role play and say, as you can see, let me clear my throat. As you can see, $28,765.43. When we look at that number, we've got to internalize that number and say, as soon as I ask them for this business, they're probably going to be scared. Now, the reason I was wondering if you would role play, because I do believe the way that you learned it, Brian, and the way you teach it to people who have been shy about ever even asking for the order in the first place, right? Where one of them, I think you do a hypothetically speaking, and then you tie that in to where you say, I've got the product on my truck. If you just plug that into step 5, where I'm saying, will you trust me with the recommendation? Will you trust me with this project? You could literally plug in, what should we do? You could plug in I've got this product on my truck. Would you like me to go ahead and throw it in while I'm here? You can plug in anything right there in step 5. The reason that I do step 5 the way I do is because what I've found in my 20-year career in the trades is when I make that recommendation with every ounce of my belief in my soul, my passion, my emotion, I'm creating the emotion through the discovery of what I learned in that home to make the recommendation that I'm recommending. And then I'm not going to shy away from the price, because the price is the price, and I'm not dropping my price. And so when I get to the end, I want to say, will you trust me with this project? I'm trying to go for the gusto. I want them to say yes. And a lot of times I can see it. You will see it when you try this. It just slips out. And then that's why I say they'll kind of come out of the ether and wake up and go, but, so they say one 3-letter word, yes, and then they say but, And if we mentally condition ourselves that every time we ask for the order, the homeowner has a fiduciary responsibility to their own bank account to get us to give them a discount. It does not mean that they will not invest with us if we don't give them a discount, but I look at it like I would fall out of my chair if they don't ask. I respect homeowners more when they ask. It's game on. I better be prepared. And there's only 4 objections: bids, brand, stalls, and price. And if we don't know how to handle those, and yeah, there's 20, 100 ways to handle the price objection and a number of different ways based on how we set our anchors up front and what we can refer back to. But when I get to the end, we cannot worry about them saying, it's too much. I'm not familiar with the Navien. I was thinking Renai. I was thinking Carrier. You got a Lennox. You got a Rheem. And I was thinking this. Whatever, right? It doesn't matter. We have to be prepared for that. And so the way that we're prepared when we get a chance to think is we breathe that life into their concern. If they say it's too much, if they said it's more than I thought, if they said, man, I had no idea, whatever, we just say, it sounds like this is a really big decision and you're not quite sure if you want to move forward. By the way, Jeremy Miner's one of the greatest. He was on after I was on back last September. I'm telling you, every one of us, everybody in sales and influence, my number one recommendation to role play at the end, yeah, you got to think about the words we share matter, and you got to have your scripts and systems down and know what you're going to say. But the number one thing is you breathe life into the objection by being a great listener, by helping them to kind of jump in that hole with them and feel the experience that they're having and saying, it sounds like it's a lot more than you thought, but I want everyone to slow their cadence down. This should be the slowest, most gentle we've ever spoke to another adult. That is the key. When we get down to the end and they start to give us their objection or their concern, the last thing that we want to do, even if we're assertive, right? The last thing that we want to do is be assertive in that moment. The last thing we want to do is ever call their money the word only. If you notice, if you go back and listen to this again, I never once said it's only this. I said it sounds like it's a significant amount, right? Because that's actually, I'm breathing life into their concern and their objection. And what I'm actually doing is reducing conflict. Anytime we talk about another person's money as only, anytime we act like, oh, I completely understand. No, it's, I can't even imagine what the two of you must be going through. I do this every day and, the equipment, everything continues to skyrocket. I can't imagine how the two of you must be feeling. And while I can relate to being a homeowner and having been surprised by some things, it's different for all of us, and I can't imagine what you're going through. See, I'm breathing life into it, but then when I start talking about their money, I'm going to really slow it down and say, and Nate, it sounds like it's quite a bit more than you had expected and a lot more than you'd hoped, and perhaps even more than you're even willing to invest. See, now I'm not like saying, oh, you can do it. Here, it's only $374 a month on the financing, Nate. I'm literally saying, it is a lot. I can't imagine. And then I'm going to displace the conflict and the responsibility by going to a third-person sentence structure where I call these generalization and transition statements. We talked about this last September. And that's where I'm going to say, Nate, most of our customers in similar situations have shared with us when they're not ready to move forward. It's one of 3 things. Either they have some additional questions. And by the way, if you guys haven't learned this one, this is a catch-all. Brian or Nate could hit me with a brand objection. They could hit me with a bids, a spouse, a stall, a sleep, a pray. You guys could hit me with anything, and this one 60-second role play will work. You throw on the rare listening before. It sounds like it's a big decision. You're not quite ready to move forward. In fact, it sounds like it's a lot more than what you were hoping or thinking. And in fact, maybe that you're even willing to invest in your home at this time. Most of the time in similar situations, our customers have shared with us that when they're not ready to move forward, they've shared with us it's one of 3 things. And guys, there's only 3 things it can be. Like, think about it. they either have additional questions, and if they do, we just jump back in and we start asking questions, and then we're going to work through those questions and ask for the order again. If they say it's made for TV, as seen on TV, it's too good to be true. Now I know I either have a question about the product I'm recommending, if it will work in their home, and now I might need to restate my ultimate buy it back guarantee. I might need to talk about our right size guarantee, our craftsmanship guarantee. I might need to come back and do a more economical solution. But most of the time, you're funneling them down to what it's truly all about, and that's price. And I'll tell you this, if you have an objection that you don't feel fits within bids, brands, stalls, or price, it's a price. If you can figure it out, it's price. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you just said, oh, my manager just texted me 80% off for the next client that buys, they're buying.
I'll do one. I'm going to toe into this, but I have to be very clear because people are going to be like, I would never go see Doug speak, and I'm never going to listen to anything he's on ever again. So I'm not actually saying this, that I would ever actually do this. But the way that you know it's price, I'm going to take yours one step further, Brian. If you said to a homeowner that said $38,000 was too much and they just had to talk to their spouse, they couldn't make a decision, they've never made a decision on the same day, and again, please don't edit this out, you two, just to be terrible to me. Just you guys not do this. I would never actually say this in the home. Sometimes people get confused. If I said, Brian and Nate, it sounds like it's a lot more than you had expected. You know, the great news is that I've been at this company for over 20 years. And the owner has given me permission one time in my entire career to offer an entire system, all the warranties, all the guarantees for $1. And in fact, there is no catch. We pull all the permits. We have our best crew come and do the job. And there's literally no catch. So it sounds like you just don't make decisions like this. You have to talk to your spouse and you never make a rash decision and you'd like to pray about it. The only thing about this situation is if I ever decide to offer an entire $38,000 system for $1, part of the deal is that there can be no phone a friends. There can be no sleeping and there can be no praying. You have to decide right now, and if you do, we'll go ahead and write up the paperwork, but you don't get to talk to anybody. Would you like to go ahead and move forward for $1?
Yeah, we're moving forward, buddy.
Of course they would move forward. Now they don't need to talk to the wife. The wife's going to be proud. They don't need to pray about it. And here's the thing. So now for all of the listeners, that means that it is always about price because there's somewhere between $1 and $38,765 that they would say yes. I think the key is we don't actually have to discount. We can get about 65 to 70% of our marketplace if we focus on building our value, if we focus on servitude, if we focus on empathizing with our customer and seeing them as a human being who is scared. They are deathly afraid of us. They're afraid of being ripped off. They're afraid of overpaying. They're afraid of us recommending things to them that they don't need. And they're afraid that once they sign that agreement with us, they're out of luck. They think they're going to be having to hire an attorney because that's what they've seen on the Call for Action news reports. That's what their friends at work talk about. That's what their parents were talking about when they were kids. They are scared of us as contractors. And so if you knew a little kid, a little 3-year-old was scared of a monster, right? I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever had a lot of trick-or-treaters at your house. I used to do a huge Halloween thing at my house, and my house was known as like the one you go to, like we turned it into a haunted house, and it was frightening. It was adult-themed frightening, like blood and guts and body parts. But you know what would happen when a little kid would come up shaking? Do you think that we jumped out and scared them like I had my kids and we were scaring people from behind the bushes? Do you think we did that to the 3-year-old that was already shaking? Of course not. We would take our masks off when we say, hey, oh, it's okay. It's all fake. Look under there. It's just a bunch of wires. It's all fake. Here's some candy. I want you to think about that the next time your homeowner is acting like you are some type of heathen, that you are some type of scammer, that you are one of the bad guys. They're attributing their beliefs and their thoughts and their feelings about contractors in general that they've been scared of, and they're just attributing those to you. It's your job, it's our job to show them that we're not the same. And in order to do that, we're going to have to be really good at our effective communication style and our empathy.
Well, our guest today has been Doug Wyatt, and the passion has been evident in his voice, not only in what he brought today, but in what he brings in even more, not just this 5-part sequence, but so much more in Synergy Learning Systems. Doug, wrap us up today with the opportunities that our listeners can find with your program training.
Thank you so much for that, Nate. And thank you for having me on, Brian. It truly, to be invited back after being on a couple times last year, it's like a dream come true for a broke redneck kid. So for the last 3 years, we've been working in the basement, so to speak. I built a green screen studio. We've shot a full interactive virtual program. It's why I haven't been out doing a lot of live events. Next year, I plan on getting back out and doing live events, but we've been putting this virtual program together that is comprehensive for our call center, for our sales team, for our leadership team, and for our technicians. So whether it's in the field or the facility, we've got customized programs that go through our entire 7 foundations of effective communication. How do we close without conflict? How do we serve customers better? How do we work on our mindset? How do we choose the right words? How do we do all these things in the heat of the moment when real money and real customers and real opportunities are in front of us? How do we do it when our blood's boiling? How do we do it when it's 120 in Phoenix or it's 15 below in Minneapolis? The way we're going to do it is the way that we program ourselves over time. And I believe that that's what we've been working to create. I also believe that's what Brian's creating at Blue Collar Closer. My best recommendation is find something that you can plug into that has an ongoing training component to it so that you can continue to work on mastery every day when you wake up and push play. For the audience today, we just shot a 35 video series on our Wordsmith program. And because I role played the 5-part closing sequence today, anybody that goes to our website at synergylearningsystems.net to the Contact Us page, hit the drop down, hit Waste No Day with Brian and Nate. And when you fill that out, I give you my word, we will never spam you. The only time we ever send emails out if we're doing a live event or we send out content marketing, which means we're going to send out role plays for you to see some of our best stuff without ever having to invest a dime. So that is yours. It's my gift to the Waste No Day audience. I have so much respect, and we're going to throw in a couple of those 5-part closing sequence role plays so that you can put that on repeat and just listen and say it. Listen and say it, listen and say it, listen and say it until it becomes a part of you. So I'm honored to do that for you. It's I think about 7 hours worth of complimentary training there on our website.
Awesome. Well, that is a heck of a way to wrap it up. We want to leave you with our challenge to you each and every week to wake up every single day and waste no day.